easier than ever to record a record, to actually make music. 15 years ago, you really needed to go to a recording studio, unless you were recorded on a four-track tape deck or something. And now, as a lot of you know, anybody with Pro Tools really has access to a type of technology that barely existed in the studios 15 years ago. Also, everybody pretty much has wider access to a global fan base. With the internet, you can pretty much touch it. Everybody in the world, if you get up there, if you're like Psy and get a Gangnam Style video, get billions of views. It's really comes down to that. There's also a lot lower cost of distribution. Previously, to put a record out, you really needed money. I mean, it was impossible to just physically get a record out. Now, you can pretty much start a TuneCore account and have your music distributed on a worldwide basis. There's also lower cost in terms of marketing options. Obviously, social media stuff is out there, but it really allows you to do a ton of stuff for basically no money. It's just how you do it that really matters. That said, there's a lot of drawbacks in promoting and releasing music. Most obvious, just the sheer volume of music that comes out. Every week, over 8,000 records come out on iTunes. And there's really only a few dozen slots in the new release section. So, technically it's easy to get a record out, but, how are you going to get it noticed? Also, record labels haven't done well over the past 10 years, and they're more than ever less inclined to invest in new artists. They'll barely invest in established artists these days. And that's a real disadvantage because, a lot of artists do need some help and need some sort of infrastructure to really move on. So I'm going to just throw out some ideas to how you maximize a release when you release it these days. First, you really want to treat social networking like an actual budgeted marketing plan. So throwing flyers up on Facebook doesn't really count. You really have to have a strategy. You really have to be releasing content consistently and be and have a reason for it. It can't just be random. And you really want to make it visible. There's also different ways about giving music away for free, and then you can also do the option of selling it as well. You never really know where people are going to discover your music from, and that's really important. That's why you really want to have everything everywhere at all times. And by releasing some things on the blogs for free, you're sort of over on SoundCloud or something, and artists can really cater to their core fan base. But you could also put the same record on iTunes and potentially get some placements for it, and all of a sudden you're in front of people that really didn't know who you were to begin with. And so that way you keep your core fan base happy, and by doing that, they really become your street team. They really will market you, and then you're also in the retail world as well, so you're reaching people who are more just sort of like what people used to do when they went to record stores and look around. As I touched on a second ago, content is really key. There's so much stuff floating around on the internet. You really have to have great content. You really have to have a lot of it, and you really have to release it consistently. It has to be great, it has to be consistent, and each time you release something, it's another notch on the belt, and it really will help you gain a couple more fans, and each new content thing gets more fans, and the bigger it gets, the more momentum starts to flow, and things start really connecting after a while. One thing I sort of learned from the film industry, not that I ever worked in there, but one thing I did learn was movie studios, they always use windowing as an option. What windowing is basically, they'll take a movie, they'll release it at the theaters, then the next step is they'll release it exclusively on planes or things like that, then they'll make it to DVD, then they'll make it to premium channel, cable channels, like HBO, Showtime. Then it'll go to, then if it's still going well, if it was a really big movie, it'll eventually make it primetime TV. So the same movie is being windowed for years and years and years. You can do the same thing with music on a much smaller scale. One example, you can do an exclusive on Spotify before your album comes out, or you can do a pre-release on iTunes, or you can release some things exclusively on SoundCloud pages or any other those kind of sites, and really start it like that, then grow it into something bigger, to a full iTunes release or a physical release, exclusive content on certain sites, like maybe to help iTunes sales, you do some exclusive tracks, add some video content, add some bonus material like a digital booklet, and really just kind of focus on keeping it premium for your users who are buying things, but also keeping it free for people who are fans and want to just support you. Another big point is being that it's so hard to get over the buzz of the internet. Technically, anybody can get a record on iTunes, but really to get above it, it's really effective to work with record labels or distributors or blogs or brands or known personalities or pretty much anybody that has a name who's associated with some sort of music, because those people, those brands, those blogs, those labels, etc., they're sort of a filter of content. They are fun, there's so much content out there that it's too much for people to deal with, so they really look at these brands as ways to sort of funnel it. Best example is one of the head programmers at iTunes once told me that, he looked at the TuneCore things, and, he's looking at the 5,000 to 6,000 titles that were coming live every week, and, he said it was kind of like a vacuum cleaner, and that it picked up everything. And if you were to open that vacuum cleaner up, you'd find some really good pieces of lint in there, but he just doesn't have time, like everybody else, to really go through it. So, it really is effective to work with somebody that they are familiar with, and then you sort of get right into their front section, and it becomes a little bit more visible. Also, pricing is really important. You always want to do some free content because it's really important you want to be in people's iPads. You want to, people to have your music, because then they will recognize your name. And, just getting people to listen to music is hard. I mean, there was a time when upcoming artists were so paranoid about their albums leaking. Nowadays, it's hard enough to get people to even listen to things. So, you really just want to cater to that. But that said, when you release on iTunes or something like that, you really want to make sure you price it right. For example, you always want to go high on your track pricing and lower on your album pricing, because you want to try and steer people into buying a full album or a full single or a full EP, as opposed to just buying one track. Having it priced $1.29 or 99 cents is really not going to matter to a person who's buying music. You have people who buy music, people who don't. If they're buying music, they're not sweating 30 cents. And if they are, they already stole your record somewhere, and they're listening to it. And so, just keep that in mind. Oh, sorry. And more than ever, it's always been about the fans, but it's more about the fans than ever these days. Interacting with them, those, your biggest fans are going to be your biggest supporters. They're going to be your marketing team. They're going to retweet you on Twitter. They're going to share your posts on Facebook. They're going to comment on your Instagram. And they're going to do all these things that makes their friends become fans of your music as well. And this is something that you can't pay for. This is back in the day, you'd be hiring a big PR agency to do that. Now, content is king, and if the music's really good and the artist is interacting with their fans really well, it's going to spread, and it's kind of that simple. You want to be wary about, I guess, any sort of getting fake Twitter followers or anything like that. Strongly suggest not doing it, because you can get called out on that. And there's they're not, spam computers in Russia aren't buying records or coming to shows. So just touch on really briefly on the future of music. Streaming is really going to be king in the next couple of years. Personally, I'm hoping that it doesn't cannibalize iTunes sales, because iTunes is really what's keeping the digital music industry moving. But sites like Spotify, Rdio, YouTube, they're really growing fast, and they're really giving people chances to listen to music without necessarily spending money, but the rights holders will still get some sort of royalty from that. Right now it's very low. Spotify, YouTube, they're looking at like fractions of pennies, but their streams are so high that it is adding up. And the more people that use it, the higher the stream rates will go. And that will really give artists a huge boost in digital music. If it works with iTunes well, it's going to be very successful. Also, digital sites like Pandora, things like that, internet radio, and the way they work with SoundExchange. SoundExchange is sort of almost like a publishing company for digital rights, and that's also adding another layer to digital distribution moving forward. Hopefully iTunes, they're a little vulnerable right now because it's still very hardware based. So if things such as Android phones, if they become real popular, or Samsung stuff, that really could hurt iTunes. I really hope not, because it's really keeping a lot of artists in business, but that's pretty much where that is. And ultimately technology has really transformed the music industry for some positives, like I mentioned, in terms of recording music, in terms of being able to distribute music, in terms of being able to react with fans worldwide. It's really made it possible for a lot of people, but the negative side, getting above that internet buzz is really difficult. So I guess my 2 cents are, you really gotta, content is king, and you really gotta just do a good job at marketing it and using it to gain fans. And ultimately fans are what matter the most in terms of releasing music. So I guess that is what I got to say. I don't know if we're doing a question. Thank you very much.